So we're here with an amazing human being at our Detroit Motor City Tattoo Expo edition, where we have been interviewing movers and shakers within industry, people doing stuff from the permanent cosmetics to heavily involved with regulations to the medical doctors involved with helping debunk mysteries, helping us unify a message and really just introduce you, the viewer, to people who are doing a lot for industry in an amazing way. And I actually got to sit down. I'm getting to sit down with a good friend of mine, and this is the first time we've actually met each other in the flesh, but definitely have been communicating for the last few years through the digital forms of communication. And it's amazing. It's getting to hang out with you in person. It's like we've always been buddies. And so I'm sitting here with Rob Smead, the owner and founder of Electrum, Electrum Tattoo Supply, Electrum Inks, and a whole gambit of other things. And as we get to engage, like, I'm learning more about you, but there may be people who don't know everything about Rob, right? So as this message goes out, I'd like to kind of share who you are, where you come from, and like let's kind of paint a picture for those who are watching this so they get to know you a little bit more, brother.
All right, sounds good. Ask me whatever you want to ask me.
So I mean, let's just get your basic origin. Like, if you're gonna watch the Marvel movie, it's like, what's the cliff notes and got you to where you're at in the industry?
So I've technically been in the industry since about 1994. I started obviously as a collector of tattoos. I guess is where my passion in tattoos began, getting tattooed. Um, and then it just progressed from there. I one of my best friends in my hometown. I'm from a little rinky-dink town called Elkhart, Indiana. It's most famous for RVs. So most of the RVs that you see driving around on the road today are from Elkhart, Indiana. That's what makes us famous there.
Nice.
But one of my best friends that I grew up with is a tattoo artist. He's been a tattoo artist, ever since we were kids.
Oh, wow.
He's got a small shop in town. He's been doing it his whole life. I never actually, I do have tattoos by him now, but back when I was getting tattooed in the early 90s, I never got tattooed by him. But I've always had a really strong interest in tattoos, and I've always been an artist. All through school, I always wanted to have some kind of a career in art, an art-based career. I went to school to do commercial art. That was my first intentional career path. But I found it to be very restrictive from a creative standpoint in regards to, like, if I did a magazine ad and I thought it was a masterpiece, and then I would take it to the client, and the client would be like, "Oh, I hate this. I want to change this. I want to change that." And by the time you go back and make all these revisions to your artwork, it's no longer your artwork, and it's pretty defeating art form. So I pretty quickly decided that wasn't the right career path for me.
Yeah.
And then I transitioned into comic books. I was doing comic books for a while, which I really loved. But it's not a very good career path if you want to make money and a good living, right?
Not very lucrative.
It's very hard to make a living in comic books. So that also quickly became not a viable career path. And again, I was just getting tattooed, and it just, my buddy owned a shop, and it just kind of seemed like a more natural fit for me. So I was working full-time jobs at other places. I was in construction when I was younger. That's really my real background. I came from construction right out of high school. But I would get off of work, working 12 hours a day in construction, and then I would go hang out at my buddy's tattoo shop. I would just go in there and draw. You know what I mean? It was a good place for me to just go sit down and draw. It was a good place for me to be inspired to do art, So I would go in there and draw while they were all tattooing, and that's more or less just kind of really how I transitioned into tattooing. So that's kind of what started the whole thing with me in tattooing, and that was back in 94. So, here we are, 30 years later, and
Yep, I think the math adds up.
I've built, I've just built a whole business in the tattoo space, and I eat, sleep, and breathe it every day now, So
Remind me, Rob, did you actually get into tattooing yourself?
Yeah, I did. I actually retired from tattooing in 2000. But when I started Electrum, I was tattooing
Mm-hmm.
at my buddy's shop
Mm-hmm.
actually, and that's where Electrum was born, in that shop.
Mm.
So uh,
What was your first baby there?
the stencil product.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that was an so I always tell people the story. I think I actually told Forrest today. Like one of my business mentors is always like, solve don't chase money, chase problems.
Yeah.
And so one of the
Write
problems
that
that
down.
I had when I was tattooing was stencil longevity, right? Like everything under 4 hours was fine, but anytime I got into a tattoo session that was over 4 hours, I would start losing stencil integrity, And so then you're getting into situations where you have to bloodline a tattoo, or you have to go in and try to freehand some shit. And it just was a very stressful part of the job.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, how can there's got to be a better way to do this. Like this, I can't deal with this stress. Like I got to figure out how to keep this freaking stencil on the skin.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, the one of the popular things was to melt down deodorant and mix it with alcohol, and that really worked well, but it wasn't very safe, right? Like there's a lot of toxic shit in deodorants. And so like I didn't really feel good putting that on my clients.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I started going down this rabbit hole in chemistry, and I'm like, what makes a stencil product work? And I started trying to learn all that shit. And I figured out the science behind it, and I really figured out how to amplify that product. And so that's how Electrum was born. And I still believe, 2012 is when Electrum Stencil Primer was born. And I still think to this day, there's no way that anybody can top the power of that product, because I understand the chemistry behind it, and I've really maximized the potential of that chemistry, right? So
Yeah.
people can come out with products that are as good as it, but they'll never be able to make a product that's better than Electrum.
Mm-hmm.
So that opened a door to another problem, which was artists saying, I can't get this freaking
Well,
stencil
I
off the skin.
misplaced it.
You know what I mean? So then I had to develop a product to take stencils off of the skin. And that led to the second product, which was our stencil remover. And I developed that product actually by going around to like doctors' offices and hospitals. But actually, what set that bell off in my mind was I had a foot surgery.
Okay.
And how when you go get a surgery, I don't know if you've had a surgery where they go in and they put the purple marker in your hand and they're like, okay, put an X on this one so I don't cut this leg on accident. So after my surgery, like I'm like 3 weeks post surgery, and I still got this purple marker on my foot.
Wow.
And I'm like, God damn, how do you get this crap off of your foot? So I go to my doctors and I'm like, what do you guys use to get this stuff off? And they give me stuff, and it works kind of okay, but it still doesn't work. So I like go down another chemistry rabbit hole. I'm like, okay, how do we get this stuff off? And that was actually a real challenge.
Really?
Yeah, that was a tough one. But I eventually figured that out and solved that problem. And so that's really what the foundation of Electrum's been built on.
So you said you came out of high school in the construction realm, obviously loving the art. Now, what gets someone to get into the chemistry of things? Do you have like a background in chemistry?
No,
No.
no, this is funny too.
Uh,
So after I developed, I was going on all these chemistry websites. I was going on college websites. I was reading like chemistry reports from chemists. I went down a really deep rabbit hole with that stuff. And actually, one day in the mail, I get a letter from like this National Chemistry Foundation. I can't remember; it's been so long ago now, but they were inviting me to be a part of their organization. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not a chemist. Like, I have no degree in this stuff. Like, I think something. I don't know how I even
looked
got
at the
on their
wrong white
radar.
website. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was really weird. And I have a pretty profound understanding of chemistry now, just from countless hours of Google time, really,
Gotcha.
and YouTube videos.
Google University.
Yeah, I don't understand why people go to college, really, because I'm like, why do you spend so much money on that when you can learn literally everything on YouTube?
I mean, yeah.
You
100%.
can.
Yeah. I mean, and now with a diploma, that doesn't get you nothing either. And I think that's cool. I mean, this is a cool little tidbit to extract is that, somebody who sees, I love the statement there, don't chase money, chase a problem. And that you can start off with something as humble as just a basic thing to solve a problem. From there, you can build an empire, right? Which is what you did, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not like you solve the problem real quick and it's easy. You actually went and learned a whole new skill. You know, went down a chemistry rabbit hole, which that just makes my brain hurt. But I imagine through time repetition, you know, things could congeal and you know and actually be able to apply it. So now you're 2012, the primer came out, and then after that, you saw the problem. Now, have you have you been able to maybe sell your remover to doctors by chance? Or
I've tried.
yeah,
I've tried to do that. There are some problems with that.
yeah,
It's still something that I'm kind of interested in
yeah.
pursuing, but it's a whole. I mean, you deal with regulatory stuff now. You're
Mhm.
pretty intimate
Yeah,
with that. So
medical.
when you start dealing with medical facilities and hospitals, and I mean, you're going down a whole.
Yeah,
That's a whole nother thing. So like
yeah.
in my mind, I'm like, is it really worth it? I
No,
don't know.
no,
Is it a problem they need solved? I don't know. They seem to be fine using that little
sure.
mediocre lotion that they're using to get the stuff off with. So whatever.
Yeah. Well, when just like before, you may one day get a letter in the mail or email be like, "Hey, we want you to come to this medical
Yeah,
convention and shit stuff."
yeah,
But that's cool. So, but that was like the snowball that got thrown down the snow hill and things started to pick up, right? You know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
from there, you're. I mean, now you've got. I mean, that's the thing. You're innovative. You're an inventor, right?
yeah. And so like I didn't start Electrum with the intent of being a brand or like going mainstream or anything with it. It was never my intent. It was just to solve a problem that I had in my own career, right? Like, but I had a buddy out in Oregon, Chris 51, that owned a ink company back then called Formula 51, and a lot of people don't remember that brand. It's been gone for a while now, but back in 2012, it was a pretty big recognizable ink brand in the industry. And so I actually sent a sample of the stencil primer out to my buddy Chris in Oregon, and he fell in love with it right away. And he's like, "Dude, you got gold here. You need to do something with this." And he's like, he actually like helped me out, figuring out how to go into a mass production with it, and so he turned me on to a distributor out in Europe called Killer Ink, and that's pretty much it. Just kind of catapulted from there.
That really hit the
Yeah, it went
right.
nuts. Yeah, and so I owe a lot of credit to Chris 51 and Killer Ink. So
That's cool.
Killer Ink really built Electrum in Europe for about 3 years. It got really big in Europe before it was ever a thing here in the United States. So I was traveling over to Europe doing shows over there in 2012, 2013, all the way through 2015. I didn't really start building Electrum here until right around 2015.
Okay, that's cool.
So yeah.
And so, I mean, what is it expanded to? Like, what does now your empire look like when it comes to with your inventions? I mean, obviously the inks and
So now we have roughly 50 SKUs under our brand. So yeah, it's grown quite a bit.
that's amazing.
And we have some pretty incredible products. We have Electrum Cleanse, which is the only Class 1 FDA approved medical device in the tattoo industry. I'm the only one that can have it. I'll never have a competitor for it.
Wow.
I have a license for it. I'm the only one that can have the license for it. It's a mast cell inhibitor, so it's really great for the ideal place to have that product is at a tattoo competition where a tattoo's really pissed off, the skin's all red and swollen and bleeding. When you use that product, it basically to kind of explain the science to you. So if you get a scratch or a bruise or something, your white blood cells rush up to the surface and they try to figure out what the hell's going on up here. We got to fight whatever's going on.
Yeah.
That's what causes swelling, inflammation, bleeding, right? So Electrum Cleanse is a mast cell inhibitor. It's basically the same product that you see when they're doing surgeries and they're spraying fluid all over the wounds, and why you don't see a lot of blood
Okay.
when they've got a person cut open on an operating table.
Yeah.
That's because that product goes in and tricks the white blood cells into not recognizing that there's trauma going on.
Huh.
And so it calms down all that inflammation and swelling and bleeding and stuff like that.
Okay.
So when you put that on a fresh tattoo, if I douse a paper towel with that product and I set it on a fresh tattoo for 5 minutes and I pull that off, it looks like it's it looks like it hasn't even been tattooed. All the colors are bright and vibrant. It's really good for black and gray tattoos where you can really see that red pissed off skin. It just completely takes it away. So if you're going up at a competition, you just have your client set that on there before they go up and see the judges. And it's almost like they're looking at a tattoo that's been there for a couple of weeks. You know what I mean?
Wow. So secret weapon.
Yeah. And we're the only ones that have it in the industry. It's changed hands a few times. It's been called a few different products in the past. Um, but the other companies that had it just didn't do the company that owns the rights to that product weren't really happy with the direction it was going. And so I'm actually the fourth person in the tattoo industries that had the license for that.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and obviously you have your own brand of inks.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's a pretty, strong accomplishment. That's You're seeing a lot of success there too.
Yeah. That's a newer one. That's only about 2.5 years old now. So we're about 2.5 years into the ink business.
Yeah.
It's been a real an eye opener.
Yeah. Yeah. We could.
I don't know in retrospect if I would do that again,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of into it now and I'm kind of invested into it. And so I don't think there's any going back right now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you're definitely being successful with it, and you're making the positive steps in the right direction for everything that's happening in the future. And like I mean, again, this is potentially being watched by somebody who could have aspirations to get here. So it's cool to hear from, a direct source that's navigating these things. What are the potential pitfalls and hurdles, and also the story of humble beginnings and what it takes, like because I think it's one thing to see somebody like, oh man, you own a company, like, oh, you just had money and investments and you just made it happen. But no, you started off doing manual when a trade.
I had no money when I started this. Like I tell people my business was built in a 5-gallon bucket. Literally, it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was mixing my stencil primers in a 5-gallon bucket. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, so if you knew, like, I was running around the local stores buying ingredients. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
like, that's where it all started. And like, it got to the point where I couldn't even source ingredients locally. You know what I mean? So then
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly trying to solve problems as your business grows. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, great. I need to buy 50 gallons of this now instead of 10.
Mhm.
Nobody has 50 gallons where I'm at. Where do I get 50 gallons of this
Yeah.
ingredient?
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to start trying to source new things. It's a lot,
Well,
it is a lot.
but I think it's important to hear that because especially it just feels, and this could be just my sensation of feeling, but talking to a lot of people, there's like this level of like, I want to do this, but it's hard, and I don't want to try anymore. Like you're legitimately saying you got to put in that sweat equity. You got to sit down. You got to mix your ideas in a 5-gallon bucket, and then keep solving problems until you find success. I mean, it's grinding on a daily basis.
Yeah, for
Insert
years.
for years, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, in the 90s where you're getting into it, and then it isn't until 2012 and then the 2015 that you're starting to see this momentum, right? I mean, sure, there's plenty of times you feel like you weren't gonna succeed, right? Plenty
Oh,
of
I
times
still feel like that sometimes. I honest to God, I mean, things are so uncertain all the time.
and that I think that's great to hear because I think people need to know there's never a finish line where you're done, right? And you're like, I'm done, I'm completed, right? Um, it's always going to be this constant perpetual growth, solving problems, right? And finding new problems and fixing them, right?
Yeah.
um on the is there any more problems that you're like, is there any problems right now you're seeing that you're going to fix?
I mean, there are problems that I would like to fix, but I'm pretty tired these days. I really honestly am pretty tired these days.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to, I think I have a problem slowing down, but I feel like I'm 49 now. I feel like this is the point in my life where I need to kind of just, like I said, I've got 50 products under our brand now. The ink is really taking off now, and it's taking a lot of my time, and I really need to be dialed in to that. So I feel like if I create more things now, I'm doing a disservice to the other things that I've created, and I'm taking away from those things. So we're actually like reducing some of our products and eliminating some products now because we just are so. It's just it just takes so much time and effort and energy to just to market one product. So when you're trying to market 50 products, and it just is like a lot. So
Well, no, you've identified a problem. You got too much going on,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
the new problem is how do you streamline, make things more efficient, and then also take care of Rob, right?
yeah,
Because Rob, I mean, you got a family,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
I got
that's
grandkids, you
you got
know.
wow. I mean, that
Yeah,
you want to be a part of that,
yeah,
right? Like I think that's the joy of that should be something you get to enjoy now, right? You put in that sweat equity, you built your empire, you built your family, you got some grandbabies to spoil and give sugar and give back to the parents
yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
So well, on that note, anything you got coming up? What's going on? You gonna travel anywhere good? I mean, any cool plans coming up, man? What's
You
what's
know,
what's Rob life now?
I'm growing the company now. You know, I'm focused on growing my company. We're hiring people. You know, I just hired a new marketing director.
Yeah.
Just hired a new videographer,
Mm.
which is something that we've been lacking a lot. We've had a lot of ups and downs. You know, I think this is a weird time in the world for me because you have all these people on YouTube that are just like these viral content creators that are making millions of dollars just sitting on their ass playing video games or and people see that and they're just like they want that quick easy rich, you know what I mean? And it's just not there, you
No,
know. it's
no,
it's
it's an
very
illusion.
people don't realize how rare those wins are. So like I think I think the message that really people should understand is like there is no way around hard work. There's no way around it.
Mm.
Like unless you're lucky. But that's like winning the lottery, right?
When you get lucky, do you appreciate it?
No,
No, you won't know what went into it.
no. And so I just feel like now it's about building legacy and um, just really making sure that the company stays stable. You
Yeah,
know, we've gone through some really rocky partnerships. Unfortunately, in business, you have to open yourself to, you have to be vulnerable.
yeah,
You have to trust people that you don't know. You know, I could meet somebody here at this show. They could come up to me and have a really good idea, and I could think it's a really good idea, and they could sell me on their idea. This is what's happened to me in the past, you
yeah,
know, and they could seem like the greatest person to get in bed with. You know what I mean? But 6 months down the road, when they're not rich because they thought they should have been instantly rich, they're
hmm
all of a sudden pissed at you because
yeah,
they don't have $1 million in their bank account.
yeah.
But guess what? I don't have $1 million in my bank account either. You know
Sure,
what I mean?
sure.
And I've been doing this shit for a long time, you know? So unfortunately, people have this mixed up idea of what it takes to get to the finish line. And unfortunately for me, it's just never been that easy. So
Yeah,
it's just about stabilization in the company and just making sure that we're with the right people, that we have the right people on our team, that we're associating ourselves with the right artists in the industry, um, and just making sure that Electrum stays, you know, the gold standard of the industry. You know what I
nice,
mean? I trademark that gold standard. We have that trademark,
nice, nice.
and because that means something to me,
Yeah.
you know, that has meaning to me. So
hmm
I I just want to make sure that we are always representing ourselves in the industry as the gold standard. As we we don't we need to set the bar for what the industry should be. You know what I
100%.
mean? That's how I run my company, and that's the message that I send to my people
Yeah.
every day. And so that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, I love it. I mean, and that's the message that need to be shared, right? It's not about somebody telling you the standards. It's about you establishing those standards for yourself and upholding those, and then always trying to find how to make them better, right? And the name of our podcast is Nothing's Permanent, right? And which I think is perfect for this particular interview because even the successes you have, nothing's permanent, right? There's always going to be fluctuations. There's always going to be changes, and it's about wanting to step up to them and to face them and to learn from them and grow from them and even like I said, even the problems of knowing that when you need to slow down a little bit or when you need to consolidate, or when you need to focus more on your family. Like I think it's so important that people need to know that nothing is permanent. No matter how much hard work you put into something, anything could happen, but you will never feel the passion, the drive, the privilege, the enjoyment of anything unless you put in that hard work,
All right.
unless you put in that sweat equity. Otherwise, it's just a fleeting thing. And that's almost a way to just live your life, right?
Right.
Of the highest quality, putting in that sweat equity, knowing that nothing's permanent, but you've earned it. And when you finally, lay down your swords and your weapons, you know that you fought hard and long for a good reason. So
Yeah.
I truly appreciate and respect that mentality. I respect what you're doing, what you've done, and what you still have time to do.
Yeah.
So,
Appreciate that.
yeah, and definitely, if anyone doesn't know, how could they find out more about you and the company?
So that's easy. Instagram's Electrum Supply or Electrum_Inc. Uh, ElectrumSupply.com, ElectrumInc.com. You can hit my personal Instagram, which is No Flash Ninja.
Yep.
Seems like a weird name, but I'm a photographer. That's my
Yeah.
side hobby. I love photography, so that's my photographer name. So yeah,
Cool.
we're out there.
Awesome. Very
Hit
cool.
me up.
Hell yeah. If you want to get some amazing ink or any amazing products, hit up Rob at any of those places. And beyond that, just follow him, just see how he does his day to day, and you'll be inspired. And that could potentially inspire you to find your next product in a 5-gallon bucket.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.